My name's Dave Bradbury, and I work with Nicole, Jeff, and Emma at the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies. Welcome to the midpoint in Season 9. This series wouldn't be possible without the support of this awesome place, Hotel Vermont, and the Media Factory, which records this, produces it, and often gets distributed to 7 other states, where what we're about to hear tonight and ask from the audience works towards demystifying, educating, and activating entrepreneurs in all sorts of neighborhoods and places that we don't often get to. So it's really, really nifty and important. So thank you all for that. Also to point out, there's some QR codes. We're going tech because we have that in our name. There'll be a program. It's taken us 9 years to think of this, right? We can get more information on the speakers, reach out, find other resources as you work on your businesses and your careers. Also want to welcome our class of Middlebury entrepreneurs who are the folks here in the front. Welcome. This is our 13th year teaching or sort of instructing this course. I don't hesitate to call it teaching, but it's something Nicole and I and prior team members have done such a passion, and always surprised with the preparedness, the curiosity, and the businesses that they work on, making themselves, the planet, and Vermont a better place. So thank you for that. And last but not least, new face in town here next to me, Nicole Eaton's been with our VSET team for 3 years now, and she's now the director of our platform, which is really mentoring, advising, a bunch of perks if you're starting a business. Who doesn't want like $4,000 of free Stripe? I don't know it, right? But check it out when you can. And I'm going to turn it over to Nicole right now and have an awesome event.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here. I'm really excited about this panel, and I just could not be more thankful for you guys to come. Before we start, so this panel's on economic power. I just want to start off with the definition of what that means, because I'm still confused about what that means. So this is a AI definition, which I think I chose purposely. Economic power is the ability of a country, business, or individual to improve their standard of living. I'm not satisfied with that definition at all. So that's really the point of tonight. How can we really bring meaning behind economic power, specifically for women? How can we grow economic power for women and in our communities? And so yeah, to start off, I'm just gonna have our speakers introduce themselves, a little bio. It can be a one-liner or more. Jane, you wanna go first?
Great. So I'm Jane Swift, and I'm old, so single line, maybe that's the line. But I am thrilled to be here. So I currently run a nonprofit that is all about creating economic power for traditionally underserved students who are enrolled in college. And through work-based learning opportunities, we help to create economic mobility for students while also meeting the objectives of our employer partners. And I come to this work through many decades of working in both the public and the private sector on educational excellence. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but also a school teacher. And she used to talk about how her first job out of college, right before she got married, was as a kindergarten teacher. And by the time she retired, she was teaching freshmen religion. And that she sort of, as her children grew, she always was a teacher, but she sort of went up the age range. And I'm kind of doing the same thing in education. So I have worked in K-12. What brings me back to Vermont is I love Vermont. For a while I ran a company in Middlebury Interactive Languages, and have so many friends still in this area, and hope I'll get to speak more about the work I've done in both the public and the private sector, trying to have educational excellence extend to everyone through really entrepreneurial efforts, whether they're in the public, the nonprofit, or the private sector.
Cool.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. My name's Gwen Pokalo Hart. I am currently the director of the Center for Women in Enterprise. We're home to Vermont's Women's Business Center. We're partially funded through the Small Business Administration. We are partially funded by the Small Business Administration to do no-cost business counseling throughout the life of a business and tons of different types of group learning experiences. We also do certification for people who are taking on corporate and government contracting. Before that, and in addition to working at the Center for Women in Enterprise, I have held a variety of positions and businesses. Most recently, I left my singing telegram business just in time for Valentine's Day. But we can talk about that some other time. I'll see how I can fit this into economic power. But I'm in love with Vermont, and I'm in love with Vermont's entrepreneurial ecosystem, the people who make it up and the partners who make it up. This is like the best place to thrive. And I happen to also have a 2.5-year-old kid. Yeah, 2.5-year-old what? So it's an honor to be here, and I can't wait to dive into what is economic power. We throw this term around, and let's put some meaning to it.
Right.
Hi, everyone. Very great introductions, and I have so many questions about my two co-speakers. My name is Ruth Steinmetz. I am currently a designer. I have pivoted my career several times, and I am very happy with where I am right now. I partner with my husband, partner in business and life. He's a real estate broker, and we co-own Steinmetz and do some consulting on the side. So multiple services, and part of that service is to support our community in dwelling well, in discovering and accessing opportunities for housing, for stability, and for building an ecosystem where everyone is thriving. I also own with my partner a marketing and public relations firm, and that is from my previous iteration in my career journey as a marketing and communication specialist. I used to be the, what is it called? Public Health Information Officer for the Department of Health, and this was during the COVID pandemic, so it was a very interesting time, and I was in charge of equity communications for the state. So doing a lot of translations and managing big grants to give access to communities that are typically marginalized in the mainstream communications arena. And before that, worked in private sector, worked in K-12 as a marketing manager, and as a case manager, as an office manager, so many different kinds of hats I've worn in this community. And I'm originally from Kenya, and I have 3 daughters, 1 stepdaughter, 1 10-month-old, and 1 15-month-old. So the 15-month-old is watching the 10-month-old, and
No, the 15-year-old.
I mean,
Year old. 15 years. We're on camera.
so forgive me, people.
Talking about the 10-month-old.
Yes. The 15-month-old
Before there's a caseworker at the door.
15-year-old, yes. I was just telling Jane here, I still have pregnancy brain. It's gonna take me a while. I get my words mixed up, and this is what it looks like to just be momming and doing everything else. So
See, am I not ready to be a grandmother? This is the stage that I'm at. See how I just came to her rescue? I am so ready to be a grandmother.
We're ready. We're so ready. We have such a variety on this panel, and I just want to interact with y'all real quick. Who's interested in marketing? Who's interested in education? Who's interested in venture capital? What about interior design?
What about singing telegrams?
Singing telegrams. Like, this is so crazy, and what an honor to just have so many
Can we
experiences.
ask one more, especially for the women in the room?
Please.
Who ever has thought about or would think about running for political office?
Oh, yeah.
All of you
Yeah,
should.
everybody's like,
That's a good way to make a change.
yeah.
You could led into my question.
I'm sorry.
So Jane, to start with you, could you just explain the leadership lessons from your time in office, specifically as the youngest U.S. female governor?
Which was obviously a long time ago in a world far, far away.
So can you just explain the leadership lessons that you've had there and kind of how they're applicable to what you're doing now and in life? You're just doing so much.
So you don't make a lot of money, but there is a lot of rewards to serving in government. So now I have to have many, many jobs because I also have 3 daughters. And they don't get cheaper as they get older, just FYI. I have one getting married in May. Expensive. So I neglected to say I served in public office in Massachusetts, and once upon a time I was one of the youngest people in the room. So I was elected to the state senate at 25. If you drive down, so I think there's, I heard students from Middlebury. So I currently live in Williamstown, but I grew up in North Adams, and it's important for me to make that distinction. But for those of you who don't drive all the way down Route 7, if you just keep going, eventually you hit Williamstown and Massachusetts, not Vermont. And then was fortunate enough to serve in appointed office and then as lieutenant governor and governor. And I'll just talk about, so I gave birth to my oldest daughter when I was running for my first statewide office for lieutenant governor. She is now mind-blowing, 26 years old, and then gave birth to my twins, who are 23 years old, a month or so after I became governor and a few months before 9/11. And so just a couple leadership lessons. First of all, governance and leadership between sectors isn't all that different, but the world has changed dramatically in terms of communication in leadership as the velocity of change has changed extraordinarily fast in our country with technology and particularly media. And so I think communication, whether it's crisis communication or just communication in leadership, is really, really important no matter what you do. I cannot sing, so I could not do singing leadership, but clear, concise communication and doing that in a way that resonates with the people that you're trying to lead, I think is really super important. Making sure that you're repetitive in a time when we have so much information coming to us. You know, people want to know what's expected of them and what you are going to be doing as their leader. And that is really important to be clear, consistent, and concise, and so people know how it applies to them. And in government and in any other organization that you lead, you have lots of different stakeholders. One of the things that's so interesting in education is often the people who pay you are not the people you're trying to impact in your mission. And that makes really clear communication really important as well. The other thing that I think is important, the higher you go, the less that you're the subject matter expert in every single issue. And one of the things that I reflected on in 9/11, I was from Western Massachusetts. I actually worked with the then governor of Vermont, Howard Dean, on dairy stabilization pricing, something I learned a lot about as a state senator from Western Massachusetts. It's also how I met my husband, who grew up on a dairy farm that I am now the sole owner of. I do not milk cows. We're not rich enough to milk cows, but I still have those 25 acres, and I'm blessed with being the steward of that property since his death 3 years ago. And one of the things that I learned in both that dairy issue, but then on 9/11 is it's really important to have people around the table who are the subject matter experts and to have the right composition advising you of both people you can trust, but also people who are the experts. And sometimes people skew that balance in the wrong ways, right? Like you definitely need people you trust, but you also need people who are experts. And knowing which way to tilt that balance. And in an emergency, people who are experts is really important. And to be able to listen to them and trust their advice and to follow it and to be able to evaluate issues that you might not necessarily have the deepest knowledge on is something that's critically important as a leader. As a female leader, one of the most difficult things, and I think this is true for a lot of high achievers, but I had to learn this when I had given birth 2 weeks before my first statewide election, and then after I gave birth to twins, a month after becoming governor. Time is the only asset you possess that cannot be increased. But you also get to a point where you can't outwork everybody else. And so you have to become comfortable in delegating and in taking time off and resting. Because nobody is at their best when they're tired, and nobody can do everything all by themselves. And so I had a steadfast rule after my first 4 or 5 years in politics where I took every Sunday off and set that aside for family time, and it made me a better leader. It definitely made me a better parent and spouse, but it also made me a better leader because you have to take time to recharge, and it's the value of your thinking often that is really super important, and it's hard to think when you're tired. You are still going to be tired, and there's a lot you can do when you're tired, but making sure that you understand how valuable time is and how you spend that time. And also, when you're at the top, sometimes you can't manage every single detail yourself. You have to be confident in communicating rather than managing.
Amen. That was so good. Take notes, please. I think Emma can provide like pens or
Well, I
something.
told you, I'm old. I'm turning 60 this year, so I have to have wisdom. That's like
About
required.
wisdom, yeah.
When you let your hair go gray, they like tell you right away, like, you gotta now have wisdom. Don't be a smartass anymore, just wisdom.
Love it. So in terms of communication and bringing people to the table, Ruth, I want to hear your perspective. You obviously have experience working in the marketing and communication field, but specifically working with the Department of Health during the pandemic with people whose primary language was not English. Can you just explain your experience and how that's motivating you to do what you're doing today and building your community up through that?
Yeah. I'll give an example of how a really great project started, and this was with the crisis. So there were a lot of outbreaks in the New American communities, and I say New American as just a nebulous term for anyone who's not born in the United States. There's a lot of nomenclature around like who these people are. I am one of them. You could be, and some people take offense to being called a New American when they've been here for 20 years. So please forgive me, I am just using that as a general term. And so coming back to the story, there was an outbreak in the community, and it was discovered by the public health experts that communications were not reaching these communities. They did not know how to stay safe, how to isolate, how to wash their hands, and do all these preventative measures to prevent outbreaks. So, and this was because communication was in the traditional channels and in English. And so on the kitchen table, these folks came together who were interpreters and translators, and this was before my time at the health department, and started coming up with translations of whatever new message. Remember, the governor would come out with new guidelines every week. They would take those messages and just quickly translate them and then create audio notes and send them through WhatsApp, which is a very common communication platform for New Americans. And that was super effective. and it blossomed into what is now called the Vermont Language Justice Project, which is a phenomenal organization that creates audio and video translations of critical messages that any organization would have that wants to communicate to these communities. And what it showed was that communication just doesn't stop with you creating a piece of information and then just assuming that the public now has access to that information. You have to make sure that it is, first of all, it is in plain language, because there are idioms, there are sayings that are not really in the vernacular of your audience. And then you have to make sure that it is also translated in the various languages and accessible, because there are some communities where there's not a written form of the language, it's only in audio or verbal. So then for that community like Mai, there's no written form of Mai. You have to create audio messages or video messages. So you really have to think about who your audience is, how they receive information, like for us it was through YouTube and WhatsApp, and in what ways they want to receive it, which is with trusted community members, people that they see every day and can feel that they can trust those folks, because we were also dealing with the issue of mistrust. As you know, government, public health is not necessarily a very well trusted entity. So we wanted to work with what we call cultural brokers, who can make sure that the information is it reaches the audience in an accessible way.
Wow. That's amazing. Can you explain how, you said it was at a kitchen table,
Yes.
literally. How did that start? And how can I feel like I'm motivated to do something like that, where we can just bring our friends or people in our community and really build something up. And that does build that economic power that we're talking about. So how did it literally happen?
So, as I said, I was recently a caseworker, and my mom couldn't, unfortunately, be here today. She's a caseworker, but she just came back from Kenya. She's very jet-lagged and tired and sick. So it began with those folks who are what you call community health workers. They're there visiting the folks. They're seeing the outbreaks happening. They're on the ground seeing the distress and the problems. And they're the ones who are like, we have to do something about this. We have to make sure that these folks know what's going on, because we're telling them, hey, don't you know that you're supposed to be, 6 feet apart and do all these measures? I can't even remember so many things. It feels like it was worlds away. But they didn't know any of that stuff. So they came up with a solution themselves. So I think that's really how a lot of innovative things happen. Necessity is the mother of invention, or so they say. You see a need, you see the gap that is there, and you see a way where you can fill that gap. It can be a little hacky, a little crude, but it works. So you just do it, and you iterate and iterate until it gets better, and before you know it, you have a whole operation going.
Yeah. Wow. So Gwen, speaking of resiliency, you see it on the ground. People come to you and they're like, hey, I have this and I want to move it forward. How do you coach female entrepreneurs through that process of what Ruth was talking about? And let's say they do face setbacks like a pandemic. How do you coach them forward?
So first and foremost, we want to make sure they know about all the awesome resources and people, private sector, public sector, alien sector, all the sectors that are available to them. Vermont has a very rich support community. Raise your hand if you work in some sort of entrepreneurial support. And if you don't raise your hand right now, I will come around and raise it for you. So raise your hands. Yeah, right? Look, 35% of this room is a partner, right? And so I love that you use that word hack. It can be hacky, right? I love the hacky spirit of what gets created here and who gets created here. And so when people come to us, we really want to make sure that they're connected to the resources, both experts like Jane was talking about, and also the people they trust. And the people they trust are often other women who are starting or at the same part of their business. I should also make sure that we know that not everybody who comes to us is starting a business. Many of the people who we work with are established businesses and facing some kind of imminent growth challenge, right? And so exploring that really comes from, first off, do you know there are all these people around? Here's a warm intro, like, they do want to talk to you for real. And then we're like, well, what do you want? Because I think one of the most devastating things that I see in this job, we talk with hundreds of entrepreneurs a year, right? And when they first come to us, they're usually in some sort of transition, right? Like something's not working totally the way that they wanted it to, otherwise they probably wouldn't come to us, right? And one of the most devastating things that we see is when they have lost confidence in their intuition and in their in their own inner voice, right? And so where we see people get that back and like be like, oh yeah, this is how I want to start my business or grow the business, or this is actually not the growth trajectory that I want to pursue. We see them do that as a result of being around each other, right? Like, and having trusted spaces where they can communicate openly. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that financial stuff for many, I get paid to talk about women's economic issues, all right? So, but got it. Women tend to have a hard time feeling confident in their financial position. And I learned this a little while ago. They did some survey or something or study nationwide, and they asked women what their biggest concern was, right? Like the single biggest concern for women and then the single biggest concern for men. And for women, it was personal financial stability. That was overwhelmingly, that was the biggest challenge and concern for women. For men, it was reputation and standing in the community. And so I think that's really interesting, right? Because we think about the trajectory of women over time, our lifespans, what happens to us in the workplace, what happens to us when we start a business, right? Like in our career. I just was talking to a friend who's an entrepreneur today, and she's been great with money, but she doesn't have any retirement savings. And she's getting to the point where she's like, oh, I have no retirement savings, right? And so that's where when we talk with people, we really are like, okay, let's start telling the story of your business in numbers. Yes, you do too know your numbers. You might not have looked at them recently, or they might freak you out, but like there's nothing that will freak us out. Remember when Planned Parenthood had that as a saying, and then they had to stop saying it? Did you know about that? They had to stop saying that because apparently stuff does freak them out, but like not the stuff that freaks us out. And like we kind of try to adopt that, like here at the Center for Women in Enterprise, like we're like, all right, nothing freaks us out. You didn't pay your taxes for the last 10 years? Ooh, you got to pay your taxes, but like let's make a plan, right? And I think that is that whole, what I'm hearing from my conspirators here, is that meeting people literally where they're at is where it's at. Like
Yeah.
that's how the economic power and really the empowerment, like, are we talking about economic power or economic empowerment, which are two different things, right? That's where the empowerment comes from.
Yeah. Wow. I want to ask you all this question that relates to that. Jane, I'll have you go first. But what role do networks and relationships play in building economic power, and how have you all seen that in your own lives, in your own careers, of your network really helping you build, and how are you giving that to other people with the networks that you all have now?
So I'm going to sound like a politician, even though I didn't use that in my introduction, and
Please
I'm going
do.
to answer the question I want to answer rather than the one you asked.
As you should. As you should. This is your time to shine.
So I think economic power means different things to different people. And I think networks are really important in helping you, and I think you said this, right? Like, when you have a vision of something that you want to achieve, I think it is super important that you have a network who can, A, advise you, but also keep you honest about whether or not you are on that path. So I have a daughter who's same age, a little bit older than some of the young people here from Middlebury, and closer to the age of a lot of our audience members. She's 23 years old, and she's getting ready for a lot of life-changing events. And one of the things, she's getting married, she just resigned her job because her future husband is moving, just got a job with the Detroit Tigers, so she's moving to Detroit. And I said to her, you have so many opportunities, right? You need to sit down and write a business plan because you have lots of ideas and lots of opportunities, but time is your most valuable asset. And believe it or not, you're not 23 forever. And so, and when I say write a business plan, that has to, I'm telling her to write a business plan for herself. What are my goals? And your network, right? Then you can put together your network, right? Of who are the people who can help me validate whether or not my priorities are achievable in the time frame that I've set. Who are the people in my network who I can call upon to help me to achieve the goals that I've set? Who are the people who can give me honest feedback? And so when I said the people you trust, one of the most important thing about people that you trust is they will tell you the truth. People, the most important people in your network are the people who will tell you the things that you do not want to hear. There's a young woman who works in Middlebury who I recruited to Vermont to work with me. And Stacy Rainey, she's a great entrepreneur, and she has the Stone Mill. It's a great little business. If you aren't frequenting it and sending your parents to stay there, please do in Middlebury. But I used to joke with Stacy because, first of all, I was so glad she wasn't here tonight because she would not approve of the necklace I'm wearing. I used to wear these big Barbara Bush beads when I was running for office, and Stacy was the person who had to come in and say, you cannot wear that necklace, right? Like, you just cannot, right? And that was probably the least mean thing she ever had to say to me. But, you know, I don't know, whatever 60 minus 25 is, somebody else do the math quick so I don't embarrass myself and get the wrong number. But we have known each other now since I was 25 years old, and she was a senior at Union, and she went with a friend to hold a sign for me when I was first running for office. And you need to value in your network the people who will be the most honest with you. I did give her a book once that was called The Bitch Rules. And there's like 2 ways to think about that.
Writing that down. What
Thank
was the
you.
question?
That was
Awesome.
Right.
Just like how do you do
Yeah,
that?
it was like, what role do networks play in,
Truth to power was my short answer, but I don't
Yes.
give short answers.
But they're concise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you can see, you can't, but there are little mushrooms on my book here. And I have been on a mycelium kick for a little while. In thinking about networks, we have gotten to the point where we like academically talk about networks of networks, right? Like it's macro, right? Like it has gotten macro. And when I think about the power of the network, I think about actually who individually makes up my network. It's like, who are the fruiting bodies of my little mycelium network? I was really surprised this last year. I had been moved in the organization, so we're a regional organization, right? And I had been moved into a different position in that regional organization. I became like a VP, like a regional VP, okay? And on paper, like that's awesome. but I was miserable. And I couldn't figure out why. And then it became very clear that I had become distant from the people that I genuinely love. Like, I love the people that I see on a regular basis, like, genuinely. Okay, so first off, I can't believe that I get to say I genuinely love people in my network, like, for work, right? Like, that has been something that's very important to me, is being able to genuinely like the people that I'm around. Not necessarily agree with them, and, like, you know what I mean? But, like, that we have this shared vision. I love that you talked about the truth to power, right? Like, having trustworthy people. I feel very blessed that I had some hard times earlier on in life, and as a result, I have this amazing supportive network that, like, keeps me alive every day. And those are the people that tell me the truth, and it has also given me comfort in the idea of, oh God, I don't know what's coming next. And I don't know about you, but uncertainty is itchy at best. Like, I do not like uncertainty. I don't do well with it. My brain doesn't do well with it, you know? I have a network of people who have helped me to just be like, okay, like, what if you just do the thing today and see what happens tomorrow? And as a result of that, I have found, at least in Vermont, that the Vermont ecosystem, network, whatever, people are really forgiving and giving. And I have to be clear about what it is that I want. I'm thinking about your business plan. I remember I had a business, a consulting business, and it got unfortunately successful. And the reason I say it was unfortunate was because I wasn't doing work I wanted to be doing. I hated the work I was doing, but it was paying me money, right? And I had someone in my network who I'm like complaining about it, like, I don't want to be doing this. I'm not getting paid to do. Yes, I am, but, like, I don't want the, you know. And she goes, have you written a business plan? And I was getting paid to write people's business plans for them, and I was like, no. And it gave me an opportunity. Like, I also want to just break down, like, I love how you explained what a business plan is. Like, a business plan is just like for me, it's my freakouts, my ideas, and then, like, a timeline, essentially, right? And as a result, like, I made the decision to move out of that particular revenue stream in my business, and that was scary, right? Because I had bills to pay. But the next thing did come, and so, like, sitting with time, I love that, like, time is like an undercurrent here. Like, time, I think you should do a thing on time. Like, get time people. Oh my God, that'd get really crazy.
All right, I'm going to do old person prerogative and ask you to come back to what that means with mushrooms, because old person prerogative, back in my day, I'm thinking, did, like, the mushroom thing she's having bring her the clarity? Because, like, we
I'm
wouldn't have
on
said
mushrooms
that in my,
as we speak.
In my, like, time, but we just had a whole ballot question in Massachusetts, and there are famous people who want to make it legal, so
what are we
whatever.
talking about here?
Yeah, I don't, where did the mushrooms
What
come
are we
in?
talking about?
Why are you on the mushroom kick?
Yeah, right.
Mushrooms are the fruiting body of the mycelium, right? And they are only possible within a healthy network underground that we
Okay.
don't see happening. Sorry, I didn't make that explicit. I'm
Clarifying for the audience.
And now it's on TV and everything. Everybody's like, that should see me
Did
afterwards.
anybody else have that question? You did. You're all like, all right, where do the mushrooms
So the
come in?
mycelium, sorry.
Because he's going to go home and say to his mother, you're not going to believe
Mom,
it.
do
Really,
mushrooms.
the whole key is just mushrooms.
Yeah. From some people I talk to, that's true.
How much do I pay
That
for
hasn't
that?
been my experience. That has not been my experience. But the mycelium is this whole idea that there's this, like, thriving network of knowledge, of support, of nourishing nurture underneath of us, right? And that we can find that nourishment in the weirdest possible places. Got it. So that's the mushroom stuff. Thanks for bringing me back.
I'm going to segue from that and say, actually, no, just right on that mushroom trail
Mushroom Trail.
Yes. And I'm also thinking about Star Trek Discovery because they were like going through the mycelium network. Yeah, don't even get me started. They were traveling, they were jumping through space.
Oh my God! And we're
On
now
a
we're coming back to
mycelium network,
time. It's
yeah.
all connected, man.
Right? Okay, so network connections. I think that, so from where I'm sitting, I've been thinking about networks, and with the work that I've been doing with marginalized communities is when communities get pushed intentionally or not to the fringes, what also invariably happens is that they get isolated from each other. And the mainstream communities have their own way of working, and we can talk about that separately and all the, there is a whole pandemic of isolation and loneliness, which is a given. And I think it's also a byproduct of what our dominant communities or society does to non-dominant societies. It also isolates the people within the dominant society. But isolation is happening at large within every unit, community, ecosystem. And what I do when I come into like the kind of work that I'm doing is identify how the isolation is happening and see how interventions are also still very siloed, and try to start weaving connections so that everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and they can stagger and leverage their resources so they're not duplicating the work, and they can have a more seamless way of serving the community. Because you can see, like, even with a lot of community-based organizations will tell you, hey, I'm helping this family. Oh yeah, I'm helping them too. And you see the family is getting the same kind of help from different organizations that don't even speak to each other or know that what's going on with this family, and cannot work in concert to help them in a way that's cost-effective, time-effective, just everything effective. So I think that it is important for even me as an individual business owner to identify the way I'm siloed from my other business owners, and to build connections and bridges where there are none, and to start envisioning building an ecosystem around me, because that's what's going to help me spring up some mushrooms.
Do you have anything to say?
No.
I love it. I love it. So I've just been jotting some things down. I'm just feeling super inspired, and also genuinely confused still on economic power, not gonna lie. And so I'm just writing down from what y'all are saying. Economic power is time. Economic power is truth. Economic power is community. Economic power is resources. So how are you guys, with where you're currently at, building economic power? I'm using that as a scary term, I know. And it can be your own definition of that. Ruth, do you want to start, since you kind of just started by talking about how you're layering those things?
Yeah. I'm kind of uncomfortable, and I think I know I'm not the only person uncomfortable with the word power. It comes with a lot of weight to it. I see power as not something that I need to possess, but that I am a custodian of, and have some responsibilities therein in how I use it. So I see power as something that I need to understand the magnitude of what I'm holding and responsibly distribute it. Because I feel that power is not something that I should hold on to for too long, because then it'll make me, there's this book I read in college called Winesburg, Ohio, and the first chapter is called The Book of the Grotesque, and it really impacted me, because it was like this, these people are, when they hold on to, and I'm not gonna get it right, but something about them becoming grotesque when they hold on to power too much. Yeah, so I do not want to become grotesque. I don't want to change or not recognize the person that I look in the mirror from what I get from power. So I'm very cautious about the impact of power, of whatever power that I get, because I know that everyone possesses some level of power. It's really how we hold it and how we wield it that determines the outcome for both ourselves and other people. I don't know if that was clear enough for you.
Yeah.
It's still
It's
a work in
beautiful.
progress.
No, and I think it's real too,
Yeah.
because it's like that's the point of this conversation. It's how do we work through this, and also I love the humility too of just the fact that power can often be misused, and you're using it as, it just sounds like more of a selfless act of power and really using what you've built for yourself and giving it to others. And I think that's something that I strive to do every day. Gwen, what about you?
I don't think I am, but I'm in a position where I get to connect people, which is such a blessing. Like, I'm like, yo, you got to talk to this person. Great, go talk. And then they're doing awesome stuff, right? And so I think that's kind of how I look at it. I also really believe in local money and like keeping my money local in every way possible, and spending my limited consumer dollars where it matters to me, you know, and so when I think about economic power, I also think about anybody follow any of those like wealth management people, and they're like at like, I don't know how they say it, I'm gonna butcher it, but they're like people who don't have money have to manage their money, but people who have money make money work for them, or something like that. That'll be my next post. And so what that's saying is, like, you know, how much does, like, when we're talking about the economic part of the power part, like there's two like super duper loaded terms that we're putting together. The economic part of the term is also like what's enough, and I really have been exploring that in my own life, and I love that I work in an environment where the majority of our clients are coming to us because they have already identified enough for them and for their businesses, and they are finding that there are not the there continue to be barriers to them being able to exercise enough in their businesses. And so we get to explore what is enough, and not in a way that's just settling, like, right? Like, this is not what we're doing here. How do we allow all people to flourish? And it's amazing to see what people do when they get in the room together.
So I think both of my co-panelists have done a great job of talking about the importance of how you use power when you have it. And I think it's the same thing whether it's political power or economic power. I would like to pivot a little bit and just talk about power, economic power in the context of economic success. So before I took over the job that I'm in now, about a year and a couple of months ago, I was working for a very large private equity fund. I also, before that, worked in a venture capital fund, and I have run some private equity and been on boards of private equity-backed groups or companies. And whether you're raising money or running a startup or a growth company, the most successful entrepreneurs are not in the business that they're in because they're trying to achieve economic success or power, although they have to be comfortable wearing success and power often, and walking in those rooms, as do folks with political power. And the one thing I will say is sometimes as women, we say, oh, no, I don't need power. But the truth is you do need power to make change. And if you don't take it, somebody who you respect less will. And so you make sure you own that, because, it's the people with power who do make the change. But the people who get funded, the people who have success and make change, are the people who believe deeply in their idea and in the problem they've identified, and are relentless in believing that the solution that they've identified is the right solution, and they can communicate it clearly. They can inspire teams around them to keep working, sometimes unbelievable hours, right, toward that, whether you're the coach of a team, whether you are the CEO or the founder of a great idea. The economic incentive often is way in the future, right? Both for you and the people that you need working around you. And so the economic power that you have and the ability to get the capital and the colleagues that you need to be successful is all around your belief in the idea and the power of what that is going to change or create for your customers, for the problem that you see in society. And so I think making sure, right? So I'll do the political example. If I ever met people and you would say to them, "Why are you running?" And basically their answer was to get elected, I would know those people were not going to win, right? But if you talk to somebody, so I could tell you right now, whether it's true or not, but Howard Dean will tell you, he got into politics because there was a bike path issue in Burlington, and he decided to run for office because however that bike path issue was going, that was his origin story, right? I will tell you why I ran for office and why I'm still working in education. I grew up in North Adams, Massachusetts. It's like a Winooski of Vermont. I showed up at Trinity College before there were internet, right? I will tell you exactly what I was wearing, and if you ever meet anybody who's known me for 20 minutes, they will tell you what I was wearing the first day I showed up at Trinity College. It was so darn, I won't use the F word because we're on TV, wrong, right? And I realized it was wrong, and back then there was no internet, plus I had no money to change it. But that wasn't the worst thing that I finally realized I was poor for the first time, because my family ran the plumbing company in North Adams, so I didn't realize that I didn't have very much. I had never heard of a BMW, right? People kept telling me they were from the main line. I didn't even know it was a place, right? I finally figured that out. But I wanted to be a sports writer. I loved English. I was probably one of the best writers, right, in my class. And I did my freshman seminar on A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. And all those little rich kids in my class who had gone to prep school, no offense for any of you who did, you don't have to bow your head or anything, I've come to terms with all of this. And I sent my kids, right, to good schools. But they already read the damn book. So I'm back in my dorm, oh my God, I not only have to write this 3-page paper this week, I have to read the book, and they already read the book. And I got into education, I was like, this isn't fair, right? Like, that's not the America, and my dad had been involved in politics, and I loved politics, but I was like, this isn't like what I grew up to believe that our country was about. I was like, and I'm like the oldest of 19 cousins practicing Catholics, right? And so I was like, I'm gonna change this, right? And so my entire time in politics, I worked to change our public education system, and I've tried in various ways since. So I was like, if we don't have like the same shot for everybody, and so I've been like determined. I've tried to do it in a bunch of ways. My husband used to joke for me, like, thank God nobody's fixed that education system yet, because I don't know who's going to pay our bills and feed our kids. Like, that's not funny, right? It might be true, but it's not funny. But I like, if you see a problem and you're working to fix it, now you're still going to have days when you like bounce a check. And you're like, it's very embarrassing that I just bounced that check to you. But like the most successful people are people who are determined to fix a problem that they see and so passionate about it that you like go to dinner with them and you're like, please don't let her talk to me again about how broken the college to career pipeline is for people without economic power who are on Pell Grants like she was in college. But I will.
I love that. But it really just, yeah, it just goes to show you have passion. And I think there's, the Middlebury students are starting or hoping to start businesses, and that's based off of passion, not the money that's driving them. And it's amazing what you students are doing. I wanted to go back to, you said your origin story. For Gwen and Ruth, is there an origin story for you all and something that you're still holding on to, which is what's making you continue to pour into your communities?
Particularly good mushroom tray. I'm joking.
That's a intense
Sorry.
It's layered, right?
Yeah.
Well, part of why I'm a designer right now, this is for the 9-year-old Ruth pouring through this. I don't even remember what brand, so this is growing up in Kenya, but there was a catalog that it was like from the 70s, because it had like really intense 70s fashion, and maybe it was a Sears catalog. I don't know. I've never even seen a Sears catalog. So I had this catalog at home, and I was a very voracious reader, just loved consuming materials, but didn't have a lot. And this catalog was very visual and beautiful. And I remember for years, I would just look page to page, back to front, just admiring the images. And I was a very big planner, big artistic mind. I even used to, I had this side business of coloring books where I would really color within the lines, and then whenever guests would come home, I would sell them. I would sell them the illustrations, and they would have to buy because, so that was my first business. But anyway, I was a very visual, artistic person, and one day when I was 12, I was like, okay, I have to do something with this book. I've been looking at it for years. And so I started carefully cutting out the pieces and creating montages, like, in a book, I would stick them and arrange the couch, and this lady would be here and all that. And I really loved doing design. And I did interior architecture for a while. And then when I came to the States, where we moved to, there was no architecture and design program. And so I took whatever was available to me, which was communication. And that's why I went on the whole communication track, career. And for a while, when I was at the health department, I was like doing the work, which is very meaningful, very useful, and also very stressful. But, I was an asset to the community. But the moment we worked from home, so the moment I would go to the couch, I would put on not HGTV. I would put on design shows where I would just look at other designers doing their work, and I still do that now, and I just was like, why am I denying myself this joy, this utter pure joy that I've always had since I was a kid. There's this series called Homeworthy, where every home has a story, is their tagline. Love it, right? When the designers would sit down, they would say, hey, I used to be a marketer, I used to be this, and then this designer took me under their wing, and now I'm doing this. So I was like, if these people can do this, why not me? So that was my weird origin story.
It's full circle.
awesome.
It's beautiful. It's full circle, and it's real. It's real.
Thank you.
Isn't it weird to share about like a personal story? Like
not
when
if you've been in politics.
right? No, I can only imagine. So I guess my origin story was, I think I always felt like I've got a lot of ideas, I got a lot of like interests, but like I've never been one of those people who's like, yo, I'm the best at blah, 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 right? And I am, my sister is a printmaker, an expert printmaker, and like, right? And so I grew up with this like very creative, whatever, process happening around me. And I ended up in Vermont. I didn't necessarily plan to be here, but I ended up in Vermont, and I ended up going to UVM. And I participated in this program called the Community Development and Applied Economics Department. And it allowed me to explore all of these different interests that I had, right? And like, I literally held a lady's leg while she was giving birth one day. And then like the next day I went and did like a public session on like rural development in Marlboro, right? And that was really awesome for me to be able to explore. And then as a result of the people who are experts in community in CDAE, they started taking me around, and I started exploring Vermont professionally. And a friend of mine and I decided to start a little business called Growing Vermont, and it was at the Davis Center, and it sold all local products from emerging entrepreneurs from around the state. And it was at the same time that the Department of Ag, or the Agency of Ag here in Vermont, was launching its Buy Local campaign. Like they didn't have that before, right? And so they were launching this, there was like a lot of action around Buy Local, and like there are these policies that are getting passed that are very effective now at protecting the Vermont brand, at least in food and ag. And getting like wrapped up in that was awesome. I started meeting so many awesome people who were like doing everything, right? And I get to still see some of those people that like we helped back, that was, I don't know, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I don't know. And like there are people who have like started their business like on their second floor apartment as a part-time thing, and now have like a huge warehouse and like employ like 1 billion people and like are everybody's favorite. And watching that story again and again and again happen, and then also watching how people move in and out of careers here and like interests. Like there's a couple of people in the audience that I'm looking at that are like serial entrepreneurs. They're like, they do one thing and then they're doing something totally different, and they're awesome at both. And I wouldn't have thought of either thing, you know what I mean? And so that's what, I guess that my origin story was. I didn't necessarily mean to end up in any of these situations. I guess things got a little out of hand. But I feel so blessed that I am in this position to be able to hold a small space in so many different people's stories. And I guess my actual origin story is like the fact that I found out that I love people. Like I like being around people, and I like that everybody's just a person. Like I really do believe that, right? And so being able to like just bask in peopledom is, I guess, some of my origin story.
I think our emerging definition of economic power is if you can discover your purpose and passion and find a way to make that into your career, that then allows you to exist economically. Like,
Yeah.
that pretty much is economic power.
Yes. I love how we came to
Full
that
circle.
at full circle. I need to write that down or hear it again. Yeah, exactly. We have a few minutes left, so I'm gonna have Emma walk around with the mic
Thanks,
if people
Emma.
have questions.
Also in a pair of Kish pants.
Yes. Support local. Kish.
Testing. Okay, it
Is
is
that a
on.
woman entrepreneur?
Yes, woman-owned business on
Any
Pine
questions?
Street. No.
Questions?
All right, so I've been giving speeches where they open things up to questions for many decades, longer than some of you have been alive. No one ever wants to ask the first question, and then you never can get to the last
Miyako
question.
will.
Say Miyako's got always.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think you called attention to in all of your stories is iteration, and how important it's not just the business, but iterating yourself. And thinking about your daughter in terms of the business plan, I thought a business model would be an excellent canvas for thinking about all of that. But that iteration comes up in the design thinking world. How do you apply, you already described it in your personal life, how do you tell others about that it's not, to not be wedded into one idea, but to iterate? How do you communicate that to others?
I think growth mindset is one good way. Also, I think I loved how you talked about these peer communities. I think sometimes like your peer community will be the best at helping you. Like everybody learns differently, and iteration is really about learning. And so to the degree you assemble the right, and I think you have to have inside and outside advisors, right? People who have the big picture view and then people who are with you down in the weeds. And so I think having those right set of both advisors and like collaborators that sort of help you, because I think the hardest thing is when do I pivot versus when do I stay the course?
Well, so I watch, what is it called? I forget. It's a great channel, but I'll mention it later. But one episode where an economist was talking about with growing and creating goals and plans was, don't focus so much on goals, but strategies. Be more of a strategic planning is not really planning. You have to create a sort of vague path of, these are the outcomes that I'm looking for, and I'm going to apply these set of things to do to get there, and I'll analyze after a period of time, and if I'm not there, then I just change the set of activities. And that takes you away from, this is a goal, and these are the linear steps to get towards this goal. And it expands your mind on how you approach life, because things don't always go according to plan. Even if you create a business plan or a strategic plan, I think that's what he was saying. Yes, a strategic plan is sort of a misnomer because strategies are not really plans. So I've kind of taken that approach on, like, I create with my partner strategy sessions where we craft desired outcomes, and then we focus more on systems and not really goals or plans. So we make sure that we have the right systems in place that will help us achieve a certain outcome. As you can see, I'm really steering away from the word goal. We create a system that will help us achieve a specific outcome, and those systems will invariably lead us to that outcome that we desire. But if we focus too much on the nitty-gritty, like I wake up at 5 and do this and do that, but like what kind of systems can I set up in my life that will help me achieve this goal of, I don't know, being an early riser or whatever. I've found that I have more success that way. And I was recently told that I have ADD, so like that's also its own set of challenges. And just really understanding who you are and the little quirks that make up who you are, then you can really work around or work with yourself instead of trying to fit in this model that maybe worked for someone else, but is just totally wrong for you. It has also helped me take off the guilt, because as a mom, there's like so much guilt, potential for guilt, and just be graceful and gracious to myself. Just be like, these are the things that make me who I am. This is the thing that I want to achieve, and how can I work with my environment, or how can I maneuver my environment to make sure that I achieve that goal?
I was thinking about, I love that term iteration. I don't believe that there's anything like failure, like, and in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we talk a lot about failure, fail fast, fail cheap. Like, I don't really believe in that term. It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's failure. It just didn't work out the way that we thought it would or wanted it to, right? And one of the best exercises that I have done and that we do with a lot of our clients, it's a very simple exercise where we're just like, okay, close your eyes. You can do it along with me if you'd like. Close your eyes. Some of you are, some of you aren't. Great, no big deal. So like close your eyes, think about you in 3 years. You are happier than you've ever been. Everything is going amazingly. You can't believe that life can feel this good. And then you can open the eyes. That was a weird meditation that I'm just going to leave you hanging. And then we ask them a series of questions like, okay, what's happening in your life? Like, what does your life look like? Where do you live? Blah, 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 blah. Like, what is getting you out of bed every day? And I think that then allows, and then once we do that, you share your, whatever came to you in your vision with a partner, and they just draw out. You're just talking to them, and they draw for you for like 5 minutes, right? They don't say anything. You're not like being like, but it's not gonna work because like you're just saying the vision, right? And then you switch, right? And then the partner shares your vision, what they drew with the class, and then is like, did I leave anything out? And it's such a simple but amazingly powerful tool and experience that most of us don't have, which is like, telling of something as vulnerable as a vision or an idea or a dream or like whatever that we can get so attached to. There's too much, it's too big for like our little bodies, right? And like, we've got to tell it. And then hearing someone else get as like pumped as you are about it and like telling your vision, it's like, it kind of pulls the rug out from under you. You're like, okay, like it's real. And even if you're not attached to that iteration, right, I think that those types of exercises can be really helpful, especially when we see entrepreneurs hitting a block in like, why can't I move ahead? Like I'm not getting any more ideas, like stuff like that. Getting connected and getting your idea like kind of out on paper, visual paper, can be effective.
Yeah, so everyone write your own personal business plan after this. We will be checking in at the next Female Founders, which is March 24th. Is it Kelly? Is it quick? We're at time.
Oh, we're at time. That's okay.
No, go ahead.
What's one thing you would change in Vermont that would allow women to have more economic power?
Wow. That is a magic wand question.
Think fast.
If you listen to the podcast.
Vermont's too expensive. I would still live here if it wasn't so expensive. Do you know it's much more expensive to live in Vermont than it is to live in Massachusetts if you earn your income?
Wow.
I think that it would be a creative, patient, ever-flowing capital tool that we've never seen before, but it would be life-changing.
Being a mom of a 10-month-old, what's most pressing right now is childcare.
That was my second one.
Yeah, and not only just I don't even mean like I want to put my kid somewhere where someone else can watch her. I want us to reimagine the way mothers, especially young mothers, are in the workforce and just make it easier for kids to be around adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good question.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly. We love you. Well, I just wanted to honor you guys one last time. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your personal experiences and also just from your time living life, honestly. Thank you all for being here and listening. We'll chat if y'all are down to chat after, but we're at time, so enjoy yourselves, and we'll be hanging.
Thank you. Not yet. Wait for the applause.
I would like to just give a quick shout out. My name is Emma. I'm the community manager at BSAC.
Hey, Emma.
Hey. Let's give it up for Nicole.
Okay, bye.